We got Emin back. Emin, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. And as I was saying thank you to everybody for listening in, dropping in on a Friday afternoon. I want to share with you my vision for where DeFi is headed, and at least my thoughts on where we are from my vantage point in the whole revolution. Eric Voorhees is always a hard act to follow, but I'll try to keep this rather short and try to take some questions at the end as well. So where are we today? Well, we're seeing something big happen. It doesn't happen all that many times per lifetime, but it is happening right now. And that is the emergence of a new class of systems. We saw this happen once. Those of you who were around in the late 80s, early 90s saw the emergence of the internet and the rise of the client-server-based systems. What are those? Facebook, Google, etc., etc. Those are based on a client-server architecture where we are the users and somebody provides a service. And now we're seeing the emergence of a new set of systems based on a different architecture. These are Byzantine fault tolerant. That is to say, there is no single person in charge. There is no cabal in charge if you do it right. There is, in fact, nobody in charge. And instead, what you have is a set of people who come together to provide a service. And that service is maintained even when some portion of these people are what we call Byzantine. They're attacking the system itself. So we're now capable of building systems that are resilient to insiders. That is not true for Facebook. That is not true for Google. It is true for the class of systems we are building. This is incredibly disruptive. So it's like a giant meteor in the sky, and we've been warning everybody for at least a decade, if not more, that this meteor is coming. And when it arrives, a lot of the financial incumbents, those people who make their money by virtue of where they are in the financial ecosystem and not by virtue of their innovation, not by virtue of adding value, those people have that meteor coming for them. You can see it. It's in the sky. It'll come and hit. It'll happen in the financial services sector. It'll happen in insurance. It'll happen in a variety of sectors that touch money, because a lot of these Byzantine fault-tolerant systems are used to implement systems of value. So it's disruptive for the incumbents. It's also innovative and a huge source of opportunity for all of the energetic people out there. I don't want to say young. Anybody who's young at heart and understands the importance of this area and jumps in to provide value to others in the area is going to come out far ahead of others. This is a huge opportunity for a lot of startups. And we are seeing the emergence of a new class of assets. These are borderless. There is no practical way to assert control over them. There are maybe some ways for regulators to get what they want, but it's just by construction a very difficult space to regulate, a very difficult space to control, and yet it has its own emerging set of ethics, its own emergent set of rules that are coming in, and we are seeing an incredible reach for these assets. Now, anybody anywhere on earth can participate in financial services offered by others anywhere else on the globe. And that is something we did not have. Finance was vertically stovepiped. I know of many other industries that were similarly stovepiped, and the application of information technology completely disrupted them. Take something as dumb as hailing a taxi cab. Take something as dumb as making a hotel reservation. And I know of at least, obviously, everybody knows of at least a few unicorns that disrupted each and every one of these spaces. Now, take the same idea, take the same disruptive hammer, and apply it to finance overall. And it's a completely different scene that emerges. The market growth is immense. The momentum in the space is immense. I think we're over 1 trillion by far and growing. The innovation here is insane. I was just in a meeting where somebody was saying, well, 2 years is about an eternity. So it is. 2 years completely changes everything in this game. And there's a lot of validation to be had. By now, every single company, I would say, maybe except 5 or so, in the top Fortune 500 have tried a blockchain solution. They haven't deployed it. They played around with a permissioned blockchain. They decided it wasn't really good enough. That did also happen. There were dead ends in this relationship, in this innovation, in this disruption, this rush to reimagine Wall Street, this rush to reimagine how services are rendered. So there will be other dead ends, and some people can tell you which ones are the ones that will end up in misery. And I think some of us, quite a few of us, said that the permissioned route was not the right place. And I'll come back to this point later on if I have time. But everybody, from Visa to PayPal to others, are now trying to get into this game. This wasn't so. So when I first entered this space, this was, it was actually before Satoshi, but when I then re-entered after Bitcoin and started looking at Bitcoin, we kept hearing all kinds of pushback. We got all sorts of stolid old gentlemen telling us that these assets were worthless, You've heard all of the litany of excuses, and now they're calling again, and they're trying to find ways for institutional investors to come into this space again, because now they realize, hey, this is where the action is. This is the new tech. This is the new right way of building valuable assets. There's a long journey ahead, though. And so there are a couple of challenges, both in blockchains in general and in DeFi in particular. There's an issue of trust. How do you establish it? Regulatory clarity, of course. And there's, of course, the issue of user experience. And I group under user experience a whole lot of other problems. Performance and scale problems turn into user experience nightmares. Today, if you try to use, let's say, Uniswap on Ethereum, you're going to be paying a substantial amount in fees, not only in fees to the underlying L1 network, but also fees to the liquidity providers. So that's the experience people are dealing with. There are far better ways of building these things, and there is a lot of innovation to happen in the DeFi space. We're just getting started with the most basic tools. But even in its current state, what we are beginning to build is absolutely revolutionary. And it's a huge step up on top of the technology that's deployed in the stacks of every single company on Wall Street. So it used to be that the crypto people would go to Wall Street with Wall Street on Wall Street terms and say, hey, would you like to have an ETF? Would you like to do this? Would you like to do that? And they kept citing some fault or another. We are now at a point where the economy is growing and we're able to do things that they cannot. We can offer to users an experience and a set of guarantees that are so strong that Wall Street cannot even dream of acquiring that same level of guarantee. So we can provide systems that ensure there's no front running. We can provide systems that ensure privacy. And these are things that no one on Wall Street could possibly do. Our technology is beginning to get better than what they've got, and very, very soon it will surpass. So it's not going to be that they patch over. It's what will happen is we are going to grow so much that the rightful, the easy, the best way to raise money, the best way to do things will be on a blockchain foundation and not on the old traditional finance foundations. So that's what I think at a very high level. So you might say I'm bullish on the space. If that wasn't clear from the fact that I spent many, many years of my life building tooling and building solutions in this space. Now, the opportunity is huge, and we're transitioning from traditional assets, passive things that you store on a siloed database. Someone else is a custodian for it, and you're dependent on that custodian for all kinds of, whatever it is, management that needs to be done around that asset, to a completely different universe with programmatic ownership, where the assets are stored on an interoperable network. There's constant liquidity, and compliance is not post facto. It's not the case that a bunch of inspectors and auditors are coming in after the fact to find malfeasance. And what do we do? What happens when we do that? Well, every few years, there is some kind of a crisis. Some kind of a small scandal. Every half a decade, there's a big crisis. There's a big real scandal in the news, front page material. Like the last one I remember was the Dole company's shares not matching. It's an absolute scandal. It got covered up, but it's absolutely unacceptable stuff that happens on Wall Street every day because they lack the tooling to enforce rules by construction in the substrates. So I can go on about this, but everything that we are used to from the traditional finance world, there's a translation into blockchains, and it can be done better. So things that are related to fund management, lending, supply chain management, et cetera, everything, trade finance, payments, all of these are better done on a blockchain foundation. Now, I want to very quickly tell you about a particular trend. Now, everyone's kind of caught on to the fact that, yes, blockchains are the future. Now, how do we get to that future? Well, it's really, really hard to fix the problems that the current problems have. So what a lot of people do is they go back in time to a discarded solutions that already existed when we got Bitcoin. Solutions that are described in ancient papers from 20 plus years ago. And they are trying to put a blockchain makeup on them and trying to serve them back to the public. Every single coin among the 8,000, every single layer one platform, except one, is doing exactly this. Okay, so I'll exempt Bitcoin, of course. It's the first of its kind, so forget Bitcoin. But everybody else is copying Bitcoin, or else they're going back in time and trying to resurrect an old protocol that Satoshi knew about and already discarded. Why are they doing this? Because we face three big problems, and they're unable to actually have the vision to address any one of them. First problem is scale. Blockchains don't scale. Look around, they just don't scale. Talk to your friends in tech, and if they are working at a big company, they will tell you that blockchains don't work, and they're getting only a few transactions per second, maybe double digits, and these are laughable numbers. They are right. Blockchains, as they existed up until very recently, don't scale. They just don't scale. The fastest, best blockchain was done by a set of authors led by Ted Maofan Yin. Ted Yin is my PhD student. He went to the West Coast and he built the world's fastest classical consensus protocol. It is now used in Facebook's Libra effort, which is being rebranded. So that's the best. And Ted is now no longer working on that project. He is now working on Avalanche, where the scale is at. And that was the one exemption to all of those 7,999 systems I was referring to, which are all copycats. So scale is something I want to come back to, but it's something we badly, desperately need to take this to the next level. The dream is so big. The amounts of assets that could be on the network is in the many trillions range. Now, I want to be clear here. Avalanche and in case it's not clear, we are not competing against Bitcoin. We're not trying to be the world's base currency, reserve currency. We're not trying to be digital gold. That is not my goal. I wish Bitcoin much success. I was very involved in Bitcoin early on. It's a system I happen to love. You can never forget your first kiss. And I remember the day I read that paper just super vividly, as does everyone else. Bitcoin is trying to be that. Much luck. Okay, they deserve it. That's a good fight. I hope they win that fight. It's going to be a tough battle. What we are going after with Avalanche is the digitization of all assets. There are many other assets. They're much bigger than money. And anything you might want to own, you need to own on a blockchain. And there is no way that can happen, that could have happened with older blockchains. They simply lack the scale. And they will lie to you. They'll give you all sorts of numbers. Anybody who gives you 1 million transactions per second number, toss those people out. They're lying to you upright. There's just no way that they're actually handling that in the back end in a decentralized fashion. So there's a bunch of liars, there's a bunch of people who are copycatting old systems, and there's hardly any innovation happening at the layer one stage, except Avalanche is a big break from what used to be. It is the third biggest step in my area of expertise of distributed systems. It's the third biggest step when it comes to consensus protocols. So that's one. And if that were all, then the only thing I would have to you to offer to you with Avalanche would be a performance improvement. And it's not that. There is much more to our vision than just performance. When you go from a few dozen transactions per second to many thousands of transactions per second, when you go from, well, I don't know if we can scale any higher, to, hey, we built a system, as we did with Avalanche, that's 3 times faster than Visa. And it's decentralized, and it's much more decentralized than any other system in existence, with thousands of participants who are firsthand involved in every transaction. These are claims that no one else can make, and that's happening because there was a fundamental breakthrough at the core of the Avalanche protocol. These are great. They change the scene not only quantitatively, but the quantities are so large, they change it qualitatively. There are people who interact with Avalanche services like Pangolin. They don't even know. They think that they're interacting with a website. It's instantaneous. The finality is less than a second. You click and it just happens. You enter into a pangolin transaction, like a Uniswap transaction, it happens in an instant. So that's really, really, really big, but it's not the only game in town. The second big change with Avalanche is that all of our competitors are converging to the same dumb thing. Many of them hardly ever transfer assets, and they make noise as if they're smart contract platforms, but they don't support smart contracts. It's that bad. So look at the top 10. There are coins in there that are claiming to be smart contract platforms on which you cannot deploy a smart contract. Avalanche does something different. It supports multiple virtual machines, and it supports the entirety of the Ethereum virtual machine. It supports smart contracts in full with the ability to support other smart contract specification languages. It's a really, really full-fledged service. Unlike everyone else, we did not announce first and then deliver years later. We, in fact, actually built something that is in heavy use, that is, as far as I know, the only other fully functioning EVM clone that you can go to and actually do things on. It's a real platform. I've heard lots of noises about other things that don't exist. When you go to them, you cannot actually locate them. So not only the EVM, but we support multiple virtual machines, and we support them to be built on subnets specific to certain legal jurisdictions. We're very big on legally compliant asset offerings, and we make that happen with the help of these subnets. The last and final thing I want to touch upon is that all of these platforms are hampered by the fact that no one's in charge. The Avalanche platform has been built from the ground up with governance in place so that the system can adapt as it goes forward. So, as I said, this is the third biggest thing. The people who invented the first generation of protocols, Satoshi obviously is very, very, has many coins. The second generation came here with Ethereum, and now we're going into a full digital economy with Avalanche, the scale it offers and the flexible model it offers. Many people have not understood yet the importance of having sub-networks. So I'm not going to say too much more about this. Classical consensus protocols and proof-of-stake protocols, or what other people call proof-of-stake protocols, they are typically protocols based, again, in the late 90s, and the fastest one of these was invented a few years ago by my student. They're fine, but they're limited. They're centralized. They don't scale to many numbers of participants. Libra is trying to scale to 100. They know very well that they cannot scale beyond a few hundred. It's n squared in the number of participants. So it's always going to be Zuckerberg and his best buddies participating in that system. Avalanche is a very, very different approach to consensus. It's much faster. It's much more robust. It's very inclusive. Anyone can join. It's efficient, and it's green. And if we do the comparison, it's got the best features of Nakamoto consensus. It's robust and decentralized. And it's got the best features of classical systems like low latency, high throughput, lightweight, and so forth. And it scales like no other. So DeFi is here. There is this is a great time. There's a lot of anxiety over where the world is going economically. And I think many people agree that where we're headed is not the world's best place. And DeFi offers a fantastic set of features, unstoppable assets that no one can take away from you, with the ability to program them, and enormous yield opportunities because there's so much demand for cash in this system or value in this system. So I'm going to kind of come to a stop here and not say all that much about NFTs and other things that are really, really important in this space that few people realize the importance of because they think of them as just cards, but they're not. I'm going to just wind it down and open it up for questions. And just to accept maybe the note I want to end on is these worries about blockchains are not unfounded. When people say these things don't scale, they are right, they don't scale. And when people say, there are jurisdictional problems, it's very difficult, they are right. But Avalanche changes the game. It changes the game by bringing in scale, unprecedented levels of scale. Avalanche allows millions of people to participate in the protocol, unlike others, which are limited in how they handle that. Finality is less than a second. It's amazingly fast. It's blitzingly fast, and you really think that you're interacting with a centralized service, even though you're interacting with thousands of participants. And in addition, it allows people to issue coins whose behavior is defined by the subnets they're on, and to allows people to create subnets specific to different jurisdictions like Europe, the GDPR jurisdiction, or the US, or Far East Asia, or China, or whatever else. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's a system that creates a spectrum between the private permission networks, which everybody by now understands that they are a dead end, and the public networks, which everybody understands is a one-size-fits-all solution that doesn't accommodate regional differences and or the need to control what happens on the network, whether it's performance or fees or anything else of that kind. So combining those two things, we're in a very different spot, and I'm super happy about how far we've come when it comes to DeFi and when it comes to layer one solutions.